You don't need a second brain. You might think you do. In an age of overwhelming digital streams where every thought, every article, every fleeting idea feels too precious to lose, the promise of a perfect external memory system is incredibly seductive. We're told that if we could just capture everything, we could finally achieve clarity, creativity, and control. We're sold a vision of a digital extension of our mind, a flawless archive where nothing is ever forgotten. But this promise, this relentless pursuit of total information capture, often leads us down a path not of clarity, but of clutter. It's a beautiful, well-marketed idea, but it fundamentally misunderstands the nature of human thought. You need something far more fundamental, something that these systems, by their very design, often prevent. You need an ending. Most people don't suffer from lack of information. We are drowning in it. We have access to more data, more perspectives, and more content than any generation in history. Our feeds are endless, our inboxes are overflowing, and our read later lists grow into digital graveyards of good intentions. The problem isn't scarcity, it's the opposite. It's a deluge. They suffer from accumulation without closure. Every article saved, every note taken, every bookmark made without a clear purpose becomes an open loop in our minds. It's a cognitive debt, a task deferred. Each one whispers, "I'm important, but not right now." This constant, low-level hum of unresolved information creates a unique form of anxiety. It's the feeling of being perpetually behind, of having a mountain of intellectual labor, waiting for a someday that never arrives. We are becoming digital hoarders, mistaking the collection of raw material for the construction of knowledge. What we call knowledge today is often just stored uncertainty. Think about your own digital archives. How much of it is truly integrated, understood, and applied knowledge? And how much of it is a collection of maybes? Maybe this will be useful for a project. Maybe I should learn more about this topic. Maybe this quote will be profound one day. Each of these is a decision postponed. We are not storing knowledge. We are warehousing questions and deferring the work of finding answers. This stored uncertainty doesn't empower us. It weighs us down, creating a false sense of productivity while actively preventing the deep thinking required to actually learn. The act of saving becomes a substitute for the act of understanding. The idea of a second brain has been popularized as a system for capturing information. It's a powerful metaphor, and its proponents have built compelling narratives around it. They show us intricate networks of linked notes, vast libraries of highlights, and perfectly tagged databases. The tools are often elegant, the methods complex, and the core activities always revolve around one thing: getting things the system. Notes, highlights, bookmarks, archives. We are taught to become master librarians of our own consumption, meticulously cataloguing the river of information that flows past us every day. The focus is on the intake, on the efficiency of the capture. We celebrate the size of our digital archive, the number of notes we've processed, the sheer volume of what we have managed to save from the void. But capturing is not thinking, and storage is not synthesis. Thinking is the hard work. It's the wrestling with ideas, the challenging of assumptions, the painful process of connecting disparate concepts into a new, coherent whole. It is deletion, not just addition. It is the courage to say, "This is not important," and letting it go. Synthesis is the magic that happens when ideas are not just stored next to each other, but are forced to interact, to merge, to create something greater than the sum of their parts. A library, no matter how well organized, is not a book. A collection of bricks is not a house. And a database of notes, no matter how vast, is not wisdom. The second brain, as it's often practiced, encourages us to be excellent curators of bricks, but it doesn't teach us how to be architects. When everything is kept, nothing is resolved. True progress, both intellectually and creatively, requires resolution. It requires decisions. It requires endings. An essay is an ending. A project shipped is an ending. A decision made is an ending. These are the moments of closure where potential energy is converted into kinetic reality. By endlessly accumulating without resolving, we remain in a state of perpetual potential, never truly bringing our ideas to fruition. The goal shouldn't be to build a second brain that remembers everything, but to cultivate a first brain that is skilled at forgetting what doesn't matter and finishing what does. It's time to stop accumulating and start resolving. It's time to seek closure, not just capture. A system that only collects does not create clarity. It creates pressure. A real second brain is not a container, it is architecture. Architecture decides what enters, what stays, what moves, and what ends. Without architecture, the mind becomes a warehouse, and warehouses do not think, they store. Our minds are constantly processing, sorting, and storing information. But what happens to the thoughts we don't fully process? The ones we push aside for a later that never seems to arrive? These become the quiet burdens of our cognitive landscape. Every unfinished note is an open loop. It's more than just a few jotted down words. It's a placeholder for a thought you deemed important, but didn't have the time or energy to complete. It sits in your system, not as a helpful reminder, but as a silent, persistent question mark. Each time you see it, your brain is forced to re-engage, asking, what was this for? What am I supposed to do with this? This cycle of rediscovery and indecision drains mental resources without producing any forward momentum. Every saved idea without context is an open loop. That brilliant insight you had in the shower, the link a friend sent you, the screenshot of a book recommendation, when saved without the why, they lose their power. They transform from potential assets into cognitive liabilities. Without the surrounding context, your brain has to work backward, trying to reconstruct the original spark of intention. It becomes a detective story where you are both the detective and the amnesiac witness. The idea itself isn't the problem. The lack of a clear, actionable next step is. Every "I'll come back to this" is an open loop. This is perhaps the most common and insidious form of mental debt. It's a promise we make to our future selves, but it's a promise without a deadline or a plan. Each of these deferred commitments lingers in the back of our minds, creating a subtle but constant hum of unresolved tension. It's the email you need to reply to, the article you meant to read, the project you started but never finished. They form a shadow to-do list that follows you throughout your day. Open loops remain cognitively active. This is a crucial point to understand. Our brains are wired for completion. They don't like unresolved threads. This is known as the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency to experience intrusive thoughts about an objective that was once pursued and left incomplete. So, even when you are actively trying to focus on a new task, a part of your cognitive bandwidth is still reserved for these lingering, unfinished items. They consume attention even when ignored. Think of it like applications running in the background of your computer, slowing down the entire system. You may not be looking at them, but they are still using up valuable processing power and memory. This constant, low-level cognitive drain is why you can feel exhausted at the end of the day, even if you feel like you haven't accomplished much. Your brain has been working overtime, juggling not just the task at hand, but the ghosts of all the tasks you've left undone. This division of focus prevents deep, immersive work and keeps you in a state of perpetual partial attention. This is why people feel mentally full but directionless. Your mind feels cluttered, overflowing with thoughts, obligations, and vague intentions. Yet, when you try to pinpoint what you need to do, you draw a blank. The sheer volume of these open loops creates a sense of overwhelm. It's like being in a library where all the books have been pulled from the shelves and thrown into a pile on the floor. The information is all there, but it's inaccessible and chaotic. This state of being full but empty is a direct symptom of having too many unresolved cycles. You have an abundance of starting points, but a famine of finishing lines. The feeling isn't one of productive busyness, but of stagnant, anxious paralysis. The problem is not complexity. We often blame the complexity of our work or our lives for this feeling of being overwhelmed. We think we need a more sophisticated system or a more powerful tool, but often the most intricate projects are manageable if they are broken down into clear, distinct, and completable steps. The real source of the strain isn't the inherent difficulty of our tasks, it is unfinished decisions. Every open loop represents a decision that has been deferred. The decision of what that note means, the decision of what to do with that idea, the decision of when and how you will come back to this. The path to clarity isn't about doing more things, it's about making more decisions, it's about closing the loops. By deciding on the very next action for each commitment, you transform a vague source of anxiety into a concrete step. You take it out of the nebulous realm of things to worry about and place it into the tangible world of things to do. This act of deciding is the act of reclaiming your attention. Cognitive hoarding is not about loving knowledge, it is about fearing closure. Information feels safe when it is kept. Decisions feel dangerous because they remove options. So the mind postpones, it saves, it accumulates, not to think better, but to avoid deciding. This is how a second brain becomes a second burden. Digital noise accelerates this failure. Notifications simulate relevance. Feeds simulate learning. Bookmarks simulate progress. But simulation is not movement. Noise keeps systems open. Architecture closes them. A cognitive architecture does not begin with tools. It begins with filters. Before asking where to store something, you ask whether it deserves to exist in the system at all. Filters remove negotiation. They prevent unnecessary decisions from reaching the mind. The primary role of a second brain is not memory, it is closure. Closure ends loops. Closure returns cognitive space. Closure restores continuity. Without closure, nothing scales. Not businesses, not minds. Thinking requires continuity. It's a delicate, almost fragile process. Imagine a single, unbroken thread of thought stretching out before you. This thread needs time, it needs space, and most importantly, it needs to be uninterrupted long enough to mature. In our modern world, this continuity is a rare luxury. We are constantly bombarded by notifications, distractions, and the self-imposed pressure to multitask. Each interruption, no matter how small, is like a snip to that delicate thread. The thought doesn't just pause, it shatters. You're left with fragments, echoes of what could have been a profound insight or a creative breakthrough. Re-establishing that line of thought is not as simple as picking up where you left off. It requires immense mental energy to retrace your steps, to find the end of that broken thread and begin weaving again. True progress, the kind that leads to genuine understanding and innovation, doesn't happen in staccato bursts of attention. It grows in the quiet, sustained focus that allows an idea to take root, sprout, and eventually blossom into something meaningful. When ideas are captured but never resolved, continuity collapses. We've all become excellent collectors of information. We bookmark articles, save links, and jot down fleeting thoughts in a dozen different apps. Our digital spaces become vast graveyards of good intentions, a testament to our curiosity, but also a monument to our lack of follow-through. Each unresolved idea is a cognitive open loop, a task that your brain keeps in the background, draining subtle amounts of energy and attention. The promise of "I'll get back to this later" is a debt we rarely repay. Over time, this accumulation of unresolved thoughts creates a sense of overwhelming clutter, a mental fog that makes it impossible to think clearly. The very system designed to help us remember becomes the source of our anxiety. You don't need more ideas. The world is overflowing with them. What you need is the discipline to select, to commit, and to see a thought through to its conclusion. You need fewer finished ones. A single, fully realized idea is infinitely more valuable than 1,000 half-formed concepts. It's about trading the shallow breadth of endless collection for the profound depth of deliberate creation. Faced with this challenge of information overload, most people ask what tool they should use. They search for the perfect app, the ultimate software, the one magical system that will finally bring order to their chaos. This is a natural impulse, but it's fundamentally misguided. It's like a carpenter who obsesses over buying the most expensive hammer, believing it will automatically teach them how to build a house. The market for productivity tools is a dazzling bazaar of promises, each one offering a slightly different way to organize your digital life. But switching from one tool to another is often just a form of productive procrastination. It gives you the feeling of making progress without ever engaging in the difficult work of actual thinking. The better question is what structure they are building. Before you can choose the right tool, you must first become the architect of your own mind. What is the purpose of this system? What principles will guide your decisions? What does finished actually look like for you? Without a blueprint, any tool is just another place to store your clutter. Tools follow architecture. They do not create it. The architecture is your philosophy of knowledge. It's the set of rules you define for how information flows into your life, how it is processed, and how it is transformed into tangible outcomes. A great architect doesn't start by picking out doorknobs. They start with the foundation, the load-bearing walls, the overall vision for the space. Similarly, your intellectual architecture should define the core functions of your thinking process. How do you capture ideas? How do you distill them to their essence? How do you connect them to create new insights? How do you translate those insights into action? Only when you have answered these questions can you begin to look for tools that fit your specific, predefined needs. The tool should be a servant to your system, not its master. It should conform to your workflow, bending to your will. When you start with architecture, the choice of tool becomes secondary, almost trivial. You realize you could achieve your goals with a simple notebook, a text file, or a sophisticated app, because the intelligence isn't in the tool, it's in the structure you've designed. A second brain is not software. It is a decision framework. It's a commitment to a way of being, a conscious method for engaging with the world of information. It's the framework that helps you decide what is worth your attention and what is not. It's the process that guides you from passive consumption to active creation. This framework is deeply personal. It must be built by you, for you. It reflects your goals, your values, and your unique way of seeing the world. Building this framework is the real work. It requires introspection, discipline, and the courage to say no to the endless stream of distractions. It's about creating a trusted system outside of your head that allows your biological brain to do what it does best. Not remembering, but thinking, creating, and being present. When you have this framework in place, you achieve a new level of clarity. You are no longer a victim of information overload, but the curator of your own knowledge, the architect of your own focus. When architecture exists, noise loses power. Accumulation slows. Decisions become visible. The mind stops scanning, stops hoarding, stops negotiating. It becomes operational again. A second brain is not about remembering more. It is about thinking less, but better. Not everything must be kept. Some things must end. And when they do, clarity returns, not as silence, but as continuity.